partition swung aside. Andre Booker stepped out in his chef's coat, still smelling of 9 hours behind the grill. He was working at Houston's most expensive engagement party that spring. Then he saw her. Brooke Hollister, in white silk, holding the arm of Chase Sterling, the city's youngest real estate millionaire. Andre walked toward her. Before he could speak, Brooke laughed loud enough for every guest to hear. "You're a man who's going to spend his whole life inside a kitchen." Nobody in that garden knew the chef she had humiliated was richer than all of them combined. 3 weeks before the engagement party, Andre Booker opened his small barbecue restaurant on Alameda Road, the same way he had opened it every morning for the last 7 years. He turned the key, switched on the floor lights, and walked back to the smoker to start the brisket before the first customer arrived. The place was called Booker's. The sign outside was faded. The booths were vinyl, and the smell that lived inside the walls was older than the lease. He was 34 years old, and he cooked everything himself. Before he started the grill, he did what he had done every morning for the last 6 years. He walked over to the small corkboard by the back door, where a crayon drawing of a stick figure man holding a spatula was pinned next to a school photo of a brown-skinned little girl missing her 2 front teeth. He touched the corner of the photo, once the way other men might cross themselves, and went to work. Her name was Imani. She was 8 years old. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn jaw, and she had been the reason Andre had not let the grief swallow him whole when his wife Tasha died of an aneurysm in the spring of 2017. Imani slept at his sister's house 3 nights a week when his shifts ran late. The other 4 nights, she sat at the back booth with her math worksheets while her father cooked, and Andre would walk over between orders to check her long division and remind her that she was the smartest person in the room. Patty Sullivan, who had worked the front counter for the last 5 years, called him Andre to his face and boss only when reporters from the local food magazines came by. They came less often than they used to. Houston was changing. The new money on the west side liked tasting menus and bottle service. A man in a smoke-stained apron pulling brisket from a steel barrel did not photograph well anymore. Andre did not mind. He had built the place after his wife died, and the kitchen had been the only room in his life that did not feel empty. He worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and on Sundays, he drove out to the farm south of the city to pick up whatever was fresh, sometimes with Imani in the passenger seat, asking him 100 questions about why pigs were smarter than dogs. He paid his bills. He paid Patty. He had stopped wanting more years ago. What he had instead for almost a decade was Brooke Hollister. They had met at a community college night class in 2015. She had been 21 then, with a borrowed coat and a notebook full of plans. She wanted to sell luxury homes one day. She wanted her name in the papers. She wanted a life that did not include the trailer park she had grown up in. Andre believed in her from the first conversation. And for the next 7 years, he carried her through every version of failure that came before the success. He drove for a rideshare company on his nights off so she could pay her real estate licensing fees. He covered her rent the year she tried to start her own brokerage and failed. He held her hand when investors laughed her out of meetings. He told her again and again that she was going to make it. There is something worth pausing on here, because it is the quiet engine of stories like this one. When a person carries another person through their hardest years, they are not only paying their bills, they are also lending them a version of themselves to borrow from. The strength, the patience, the unshakable belief. And sometimes the person being carried mistakes that borrowed strength for their own. They forget who handed it to them. By the time they have arrived, they have rewritten the story in their head so that they were always the one walking. The man who carried them becomes in the retelling just a man they once knew. This is not always cruelty. Sometimes it is just the way ambition rearranges memory. But it is worth naming because every person watching has either done it to someone or had it done to them. And in 2022, she did make it. Hollister Properties signed its first 8-figure listing, and her photo ran in the Houston Business Journal. That was the year she stopped answering his calls at night. The dinners moved later. The cancellations started. By the spring of this year, she had stopped coming home altogether. Andre told himself she was busy. He told himself a lot of things he no longer believed. He also told Imani that Miss Brooke was just working hard, and Imani, who was 8 and not stupid, had stopped asking after the second month. The job came through his catering line on a Tuesday. A coordinator from a private events firm wanted a high-end barbecue station for a black tie engagement party at Bayou Bend. 200 guests, top fee, no questions asked. The coordinator did not say whose engagement it was, and Andre did not ask. He needed the money. Imani's school was raising tuition in the fall, and he had been turning the number over in his head for a week. He spent 4 days on the menu, drove out to Montgomery County to pick up the pork himself, and polished his own knives the night before. Imani sat on the counter and watched him sharpen them. She asked him if rich people ate barbecue differently than regular people. He told her no. They just paid more for it. On the night of the party, he loaded the van alone, drove across town, and set up his station behind a row of white linen partitions in the garden. The estate looked like a movie set. Strings of warm bulbs hung between the oak trees. A jazz quartet played near the fountain. Champagne moved through the crowd on silver trays. Andre worked the grill for 9 hours and never saw the guests. He smelled their cologne when the wind shifted and heard their laughter rise and fall. But the partitions kept him out of sight. That was the deal. The food was elegant. The chef was invisible. Around 11 o'clock, the coordinator pulled the partition aside and asked him to come out and accept a thank you from the host. Andre wiped his hands on a clean towel, took off his apron, and stepped through into the garden. He saw Brooke first. She was standing near the fountain in a white silk dress, a glass of champagne in her left hand, her right resting on the arm of a tall blonde man in a tailored navy suit. Andre recognized the man from the magazine covers. Chase Sterling, 36 years old, the youngest principal at the Sterling Group, the second largest real estate firm in the Southwest, the man whose father owned half of River Oaks. Andre stopped walking. He could feel the heat coming off his own face. He had not seen Brooke in 9 weeks. She had told him she was traveling for work. She had told him they needed time to think. She saw him now, and for a second, her smile did not change. Then it did. It became smaller and harder. And the woman who had once cried in his car the night her first brokerage failed was gone from her eyes entirely. The coordinator, who did not understand what was happening, walked Andre forward and introduced him as the chef of the evening. There was polite applause. Chase Sterling extended a hand, his grip firm and his eye contact brief, and thanked him for the work. Andre shook the hand without looking at it. He was watching Brooke. The question had been sitting in his mouth since he stepped through the partition, and he could not hold it anymore. "Fiancé?" he asked. The garden quieted in pieces. The guests closest to them turned first. Brooke's smile froze, then sharpened. "Andre, this is not the time," she said, low and tight. He did not raise his voice. He simply didn't move. The coordinator looked between them and took a small step back. Brooke set her glass down on the rim of the fountain and straightened her spine the way she used to when she was about to walk into a meeting she expected to lose. Only this time, she was not about to lose. She was about to win in front of everyone. She said loud enough that the jazz quartet stopped playing on its own. "I'm sorry for the interruption. This is Andre Booker. He runs a little barbecue place over on Alameda. We used to know each other." A few guests laughed, uncertain. Chase Sterling did not laugh. He was watching Andre now, and his face had gone very still. "We didn't just know each other, Brooke," Andre said. His voice was quiet and even, and it carried farther than hers had. "We were together for almost 10 years. The laughter died. Brooke tilted her head, her eyes very bright. "We were friends," she said, "once a long time ago before I grew up." She looked around the garden at all the cameras and the champagne and the warm bulbs in the oak trees, and her smile became something Andre had never seen on her face before. "You're sweet, Andre, but let's be honest in front of everyone. You're a man who's going to spend his whole life inside a kitchen. I'm not. I never was." Nobody in the garden spoke. Andre looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Once very slightly, the way a man nods when he is filing something away inside himself for later. He turned around and walked back through the partitions to his station. He took off his apron and folded it. He told Patty to finish breaking down without him. He got into the van and drove home. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning when he reached the house. The porch light was on a timer. His sister had texted at 10:30 that Imani had fallen asleep on the couch waiting up for him. The kitchen smelled like the coffee he had forgotten to clean out that morning. He sat down at the table without turning on the overhead light, stared at the wall, and did not cry. He had used up that part of himself somewhere on the interstate. If there is one thing worth taking from this part of the story, before we go any further, it is this. Humiliation when it comes from someone you loved does not actually hurt the most in the moment it happens. It hurts in the long, quiet drive home afterward, when you realize that the version of them you had been protecting in your own mind no longer exists and may never have existed at all. The work in the days that follow is not to hate them. The work is to stop carrying the version of them that is no longer real. Most people never finish that work. The ones who do are the ones who get to become something new. The call came at 1:17. The number was a Connecticut area code, and the man on the other end identified himself as Thomas Beaumont, attorney for the estate of Walter Booker. Andre did not place the name for a moment. Walter Booker was a face from a single Christmas in 1996, a tall, quiet man, the only other Booker in the family who had ever worn a suit to dinner, who had handed him a pocket knife and disappeared back into a black town car before the meal was served. Walter was his father's older brother. He had cut ties with the family after a fight Andre was never told the details of, something about a piece of land in Beaumont, and a debt that should have been forgiven and wasn't. He had moved north and become in the gaps left by silence a kind of myth. Thomas Beaumont spoke carefully. He said that Walter Booker had passed away 3 days earlier from a long illness, and that Walter had named his nephew, Andre Booker of Houston, Texas, as the sole heir to his estate. Andre closed his eyes. He thought it was a scam. He was about to hang up. Then Thomas Beaumont said the number. The estate consisted, in addition to several private residences and controlling personal interests, in 2 foundations of full ownership of Sterling Horizon Group, a privately held holding company with operations in commercial real estate, hospitality, logistics, and energy. The current valuation audited the previous quarter was approximately $140 billion. The kitchen was very quiet. "I understand this is a lot to take in," Thomas Beaumont said. "I'd like to fly down tomorrow and meet you in person. Mr. Booker left specific instructions, and I think it's important you hear them before you make any decisions." Andre said yes, hung up, and sat at the table for another hour before he stood. At some point, he walked into the living room and looked at his daughter asleep on the couch, her cheek pressed against a stuffed elephant she had outgrown 2 years ago and refused to retire. He pulled the blanket up over her shoulder. He thought about what $140 billion meant in a sentence. Then he thought about what it meant in a life. He could not get the 2 thoughts to meet. The lawyer arrived the next afternoon. He came alone in a charcoal suit, carrying a black leather case. They sat in the back booth of Booker's after the lunch rush. Patty brought them coffee and stayed out of earshot. Thomas Beaumont opened the case, laid out 3 folders, and set a single sealed envelope on top of them. "Before we go through the assets," he said, "your uncle asked me to read you this. He wrote it himself about 6 months ago when he knew he was running out of time." He broke the seal and read aloud. The letter was short. "Walter Booker, wrote that he had watched his nephew from a distance for many years. He wrote that he had never made his own peace with the world he had built, because the world he had built had cost him almost everything that mattered. He wrote that he was leaving everything to Andre, because Andre, of all the Bookers, had grown up poor and stayed kind. He added near the end that he had also watched Andre raise his daughter alone after Tasha died, and that a man who could do that without bitterness was a man who could be trusted with more than a knife. Then he wrote the condition. Andre Booker would have 90 days. During those 90 days, he would be installed as chairman of Sterling Horizon Group. He would have full executive authority. He would have access to every account, every property, every contract. He could use them however he wished. But if at any point during those 90 days he used the company's power to humiliate, ruin, or take revenge on another human being, the inheritance would be revoked. Every asset would pass instead to the two foundations, and Andre would walk away with nothing. The judgment would be made by Thomas Beaumont, acting as executor based on conduct rather than outcome. The letter was specific on this point. Walter Booker did not care if Andre built or sold or merged. He cared whether the boy who had been kind when he was poor stayed kind when he was rich. Thomas Beaumont folded the letter and looked at Andre across the table. "You don't have to decide tonight," he said, "but the clock starts the moment you sign." Andre looked down at his hands. His knuckles were still red from the grill the night before. He thought about Brooke's face in the garden, the way her smile had become small and hard. He thought about the laughter that had started and then stopped. He thought about $140 billion and what a man could do in 90 days with that kind of weight in his hands. He also thought about Imani and about whether the man she would meet at the end of those 90 days would still be the same man who tucked her in on the couch. He set the contract aside and told Thomas he would meet him at the Four Seasons in the morning to sign. The clock started on a Wednesday morning in late April. Andre signed the documents in Thomas Beaumont's hotel suite at the Four Seasons in Houston. And by the time he walked back to the elevator, he was the chairman of a company with 40,000 employees on 3 continents. Thomas handed him a black phone and an unmarked envelope containing the access codes. He said the company plane was waiting at Sugar Land Regional. He said the first board meeting would be the following morning. And after that, Andre was on his own. The 90-day count would be silent. Thomas would observe. Andre went home first. He sat on the edge of his daughter's bed and explained in the careful voice he reserved for hard truths that he was going to be working out of town for a few months, but that he would call every single night before bed and fly back every weekend he could. Imani asked him if it was because of Miss Brooke. He told her no. She asked him if he was in trouble. He told her no again. And then he told her that sometimes life hands a man a job he did not apply for, and the only way to know if he can do it is to try. She thought about that for a long moment. Then she asked him to bring her back a snow globe from every city he visited. He promised. He packed 2 suits he had bought for funerals, a worn duffel bag, and the pocket knife his uncle had once handed him as a child. He drove to Booker's at 5 o'clock in the morning, opened the back door, and walked through the empty kitchen one more time. Patty came in at 6 o'clock and found him sitting at the counter in a suit. He told her simply that he had to be out of town for a while, that the payroll was funded for 6 months in an account she would now have signing authority on, and that he needed her to keep the place running. He also told her that his sister would be bringing Imani by some afternoons after school, and that he wanted her to keep an eye on her like she always had. Patty did not ask why. She had known him for 5 years, and she had learned not to press. The Sterling Horizon Group headquarters were not in Houston. The company was incorporated in Delaware, headquartered in a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan, and operated quietly across the country. Andre landed at Teterboro that afternoon. A car took him into the city. The lobby of the tower had 40-foot ceilings and brushed steel, and the man waiting for him by the security desk was a senior vice president named Franklin Crane, who had served his uncle for 19 years. Franklin did not hide his disbelief. He looked at the cuff of Andre's suit, which was a quarter-inch too long, and at the wear pattern on the heel of his shoes. He greeted him with formal politeness and led him up to the executive floor. In the boardroom the next morning, 12 senior officers waited around a long walnut table. Andre introduced himself, said he was here to learn before he was here to lead, and asked each of them to walk him through their division. 3 of them did not bother to hide their smiles. One of them, a regional president named Brad Henley, opened his laptop and answered emails for half the meeting. Andre asked at the end of each presentation the kind of question a man who had run a small business for 7 years asks. He wanted to know what each division spent on labor, what its margins looked like by quarter, where it lost money it should not have lost. The questions were not sophisticated. They were specific. Several of the officers who had spent the last decade insulating themselves with jargon found themselves answering more directly than they were comfortable answering. Brad Henley did not look up from his laptop until the 3rd hour, when Andre asked him a question he could not deflect. He answered badly. He never opened the laptop again. By the end of the first week, 2 divisional heads had quietly leaked to financial reporters that the new chairman was, in the words of one anonymous source, some backwoods barbecue cook from Texas who couldn't read a balance sheet if you printed it on a menu. The quote was repeated on a cable financial program the next morning by a host who chuckled through the word backwoods in a way that everybody understood and nobody named. Andre read it in the back of a town car on his way to a closing in Dallas. He did not respond. He went to the closing, listened for 2 hours, asked 4 questions that none of the lawyers had thought to ask, and signed the deal at a price $3 million below the original ask. Franklin Crane, sitting beside him, said nothing in the car afterward, but he stopped smiling at the cuff of Andre's suit. There is something specific that happens to a black man who walks into a room like that for the first time, and it is worth saying plainly. He is not given the benefit of the doubt that the suit confers on other men. He has to earn back every morning the assumption of competence that his peers were handed at the door. Andre understood this. He had understood it since he was 19, working the line at a steakhouse off Westheimer, where the manager called him by the wrong name for 2 years on purpose. He did not waste energy on it. He just made sure that by the 3rd question in every meeting, the room understood that he had read the documents more carefully than they had. He never raised his voice. He never had to. In the weeks that followed, Andre developed a routine he kept regardless of which city he was working in. He woke at 5. He read the previous day's closing reports before sunrise. He took every meeting where the people across the table believed they knew more than he did. And he let them keep believing it until the 3rd or 4th question. He fired no one in the first month. He promoted no one. He listened. And every night at 8:30 Central Time, no matter what city he was in or what meeting he was in the middle of, he stepped out of the room and called his daughter and listened to her. Read a chapter of whatever book she was working through that week. Franklin Crane, who had watched 2 interim chairmen come and go before Andre started taking notes in the meetings Andre ran. He had not done that for anyone since Walter. Back in Houston, Brooke Hollister and Chase Sterling were everywhere. Their faces ran on the cover of the May issue of Houstonia under the headline, "The New Aristocracy." The piece described their wedding plans, their River Oaks estate, and the charity gala they would be hosting in June. There was a photograph of Brooke in a cream blazer, laughing at something Chase had said with the city skyline behind them. In an interview tied to the cover, Chase was asked about his commitment to community. He spoke about wanting to bring a higher standard of living to a city that he said had been held back for too long by a certain kind of small thinking and small ambition. Brooke beside him agreed. She said she had grown up around that kind of thinking and had spent her whole career escaping it. The article did not name Andre. It did not have to. 3 days after, it ran a clip from the engagement party leaked online. Somebody had filmed the moment with a phone from behind the fountain. The caption on the clip read, "Real estate queen tells barbecue boyfriend his place." It racked up 2 million views in 48 hours. Comments under the clip celebrated Brooke as honest and ambitious. A smaller but louder set of comments said things about Andre that did not need to be said about anyone. But that always seemed to get said anyway, when the camera caught a black man being humiliated by a white woman in a white dress. Andre's sister called him about it once, furious. He told her to leave it alone. He told her he was not going to spend a single hour of his life answering people who had already decided what he was. Andre in the glass tower in Manhattan watched the clip once on his phone late at night, with the city dark outside the window. Then he set the phone face down on the desk and went back to reading a quarterly report. He never called her. He never called anyone. He went to work. The press conference came 6 weeks into the 90 days. It was a major industry event at the George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston, organized by the Southwest Commercial Real Estate Association, the kind of gathering where the city's biggest developers announced their next moves, and the financial press came down from New York to listen. Chase Sterling was scheduled to deliver the keynote. He was going to announce a $1.2 billion mixed-use development on the east side of the city, a project his family firm had spent 2 years assembling. Brooke was sitting in the third row when the lights came up. She wore a dark green dress and the diamond ring Chase had given her. The moderator, the executive director of the association, walked to the podium to introduce the keynote. But before she did, she said she wanted to take a moment to welcome a new figure to the regional industry, a man whose company had quietly become the single largest commercial landholder in the Southwest over the last decade, and who had recently taken over as chairman. She said his name. She asked him to stand from the back of the room. Andre stood up. He was wearing a charcoal suit that fit him now. He walked to the front. Brooke did not see him until he was halfway down the aisle, and when she did, her hand closed on the program in her lap, so hard the paper folded in half. He did not look at her as he passed. He stepped up onto the stage, shook the moderator's hand, and turned to face the room. The moderator said his title. Chairman Sterling Horizon Group. The room went very still. The financial reporters in the press section understood the name first. Sterling Horizon Group had been a quiet giant for decades, owned by a man almost nobody in the industry had met, with a real estate portfolio that included buildings the Sterling Group leased space in. The two companies had no relationship. The shared word in their names was a coincidence that had embarrassed Chase's father once at a charity dinner and had never been spoken of since. Andre thanked the moderator. He said he would not speak long because he was here to listen. He said he had spent most of his life on the other side of rooms, like this one, cooking food for the people who sat in the front rows, and he intended to remember that for as long as he was in this job. He sat down in the front row 2 seats from Brooke without looking at her. When Chase walked to the podium for his keynote, the polite confusion in his face was visible from the back of the room. He delivered his remarks. He announced the $1.2 billion project. He spoke about partnerships and vision. At the end of his keynote, he asked the moderator on impulse if Andre would like to say a word about the project, since Sterling Horizon was one of the underlying landowners on the parcel. The moderator looked at Andre. So did Chase. So did Brooke. Andre stood up. He walked to the podium. He said the project was a good one. He said his company looked forward to seeing how the partnership developed. He had nothing further to add. Then he walked back to his seat. He never looked at Brooke even once. What happened next was the moment that would be replayed on financial news segments for the rest of the week. The most powerful men in the room watched him as he sat down. 2 of them men who had never spoken to Chase as equals stood up to shake Andre's hand. Then 3 more stood. Then a row of them. Within a minute, half the room was on its feet. Chase was still standing at the podium. Brooke had not moved at all. Her hand was still closed on the folded program. A reporter near the back who had filmed the engagement party clip 6 weeks earlier was now filming this one. The caption on this clip posted that afternoon read, "The barbecue chef nobody invited owns the room." That night in a private dining room at the St. Regis, 11 men who had laughed at the engagement party 6 weeks earlier asked Andre if he would consider letting them buy into his next acquisition. He thanked them. He told them he was not raising outside capital. He paid for everyone's dinner without comment. If there is anything to notice in this part of the story, it is how quickly the same room can change its mind about a man. The men who shook Andre's hand that day were the same men who would not have made eye contact with him in the garden 6 weeks earlier. They were not bad men. They were ordinary men. And ordinary men, for the most part, do not decide who deserves respect on their own. They wait to see who the room is respecting, and then they join in. This is not a flaw unique to wealth or to real estate. It is in every office, every classroom, every neighborhood. The lesson is not to be angry at the men who only see you after the room turns. The lesson is to remember, when the room turns toward you, the people who saw you before it did. Because those are the only people whose opinion of you was ever actually about you. The flattery came in waves after that. Invitations to clubs Andre had never heard of arrived by courier. Letters from boards offering directorships. A senator from Louisiana called personally to express his admiration. Brooke's mother, who had once told Andre at a Christmas dinner in 2017 that her daughter would never marry beneath her station, sent a handwritten card asking if he might come to brunch. Andre answered none of them. He worked. He learned the company. He flew home most weekends and took Imani to the Children's Museum and to the same diner on Cavalcade, where they had been eating Sunday breakfast since she was 3. And more than he wanted to admit, he started to enjoy the silence that fell over rooms when he walked in. It was Franklin Crane who said something. They were in the car coming back from a site visit in Charleston. Franklin had served Walter for 19 years and had not particularly liked him. He said without looking over that the last 6 weeks had been the easiest he had ever had at the company, because Andre still listened and because Andre had not yet started believing the things people now said about him. He said that the day Andre started believing them, he would lose the company faster than he had inherited it. Andre said nothing. He thought about that conversation for the rest of the night. If you are reading or hearing this, and you have ever been on the receiving end of sudden praise, after a long stretch of being overlooked, this part is for you. The hardest test does not come on the day people laugh at you. The hardest test comes on the day they finally stand up and clap, because that is the day you are most tempted to forget who you were before the room turned. Hold on to that earlier version of yourself, not out of bitterness, out of accuracy. He is the one who actually got you here. Chase Sterling did not call. Chase Sterling investigated. He hired a private firm out of New York to assemble a full background file on Andre Booker. The file came back thin. Widower, single father, small business owner, no criminal history, no political donations, no prior connection to Walter Booker that anyone could document beyond a single Christmas visit. The firm flagged, however, that the proposed East Side development depended on 3 separate land parcels, and that 2 of those parcels were owned by subsidiaries of Sterling Horizon Group. Without those parcels, the project could not move forward. Without the project, the Sterling Group's financing, which had been structured against expected revenues from the development, would collapse inside of 90 days. Chase read the report twice. He understood by the end of the second reading that Andre Booker could end his family's company with a single phone call. He did not tell Brooke. He told her instead that there were a few small complications that the financing structure needed adjusting, and that nothing was wrong. She did not press. She had been distracted for weeks. Her assistants had noticed her watching the press conference clip on her phone in the back seat of cars. She had not slept well in 23 days. Brooke came to the tower in Manhattan on the 73rd day. She did not call ahead. She gave her name at the security desk in the lobby and asked to see the chairman. Andre was in his office. The receptionist on the executive floor told him a Miss Hollister was downstairs. He sat at his desk for a long time before he told the receptionist to send her up. She walked into his office in a black coat, her hair down, no ring on her finger. She stood in the middle of the room and looked at him across the desk. She told him she had been wrong. She told him she had been afraid, and that fear had made her cruel, and that she had spent every day since the engagement party trying to forget what she had said to him in that garden. Her voice broke when she added that Chase's company was in trouble. She knew Andre had the power to save it or to end it, and she was not here to ask him to save it. She was here to ask him to take her back. Andre looked at her across the room, and he felt for the first time since he had signed Thomas Beaumont's documents the full weight of what he had become. He could destroy them. He could save them. He could do either thing. And Brooke would tell herself for the rest of her life that she had been right to come to this office. The 90-day clock was almost out. The decision was no longer about money. The decision was about whether the man who had stood in the garden that night still existed inside the man who now sat behind this desk. He told her he needed 24 hours. She nodded. She left. He sat alone in the office until the city outside the window went dark. Andre did not sleep that night. He sat in the office until the sky over the city went from black to gray. He thought about Brooke's face when she had asked him to take her back, and about the way she had not asked him anything else. Not how he wasn't where he had been, not what the last 73 days had done to him. She had not asked about Imani, who had spent 2 birthdays of her life sitting at Brooke's table being told she was beautiful. Brooke had not said her name once. Andre noticed that, and he understood what the noticing meant. He thought about Chase, who had stood at the podium 6 weeks ago and announced a project he could not finish without Andre's signature. And he thought about Walter Booker, who had watched him from a distance for a long time before deciding he would be the one to inherit the weight. He read the letter from his uncle again at 4 o'clock in the morning. The paper had softened along the creases from being carried in his coat pocket for 73 days. He read the part about staying kind when he was rich, and then he read the part about how Walter had never made his peace with the world he had built. He understood for the first time what his uncle had meant by that line. Walter had built the company. The company had built someone Walter no longer recognized in the mirror. The letter was not a will. It was a warning. At 7 o'clock, he called Thomas Beaumont. He told him the meeting that would decide everything would happen the following Monday at the company's regional office in Houston. He asked Thomas to be there. Thomas said he had been planning to be there anyway. The meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock. By 9:30, the parking deck of the Houston Tower was full of black cars. Word had moved through the industry over the weekend. Chase Sterling had quietly informed his board that a single counterparty held the future of the East Side development. He had not named Andre. He did not need to. The men who had stood up at the press conference to shake Andre's hand had stayed up late on Sunday night talking to one another. By Monday morning, half the senior leadership of commercial real estate in the Southwest was either in the building or waiting by a phone. Chase arrived at 9:50. He came alone in a dark suit, carrying a single folder. He sat down in the conference room and did not open it. Brooke was not with him. She had asked the night before if she could come. He had told her no, in a voice she had never heard him use, and she had not asked again. Andre walked into the conference room at 10 o'clock exactly. Franklin Crane came in behind him and closed the door. Thomas Beaumont was already seated at the far end of the table, with a yellow legal pad in front of him and a black pen resting on top of it. He never wrote anything down. He was not there to record. He was there to watch. Andre sat across from Chase. He did not offer his hand. Chase did not extend his. The room was quiet for almost a minute before Andre spoke. He said he understood that Chase's company had structured its financing against the East Side project, and that without the 2 parcels, Sterling Horizon controlled the project, could not move forward, and the financing would collapse. He said his lawyers had confirmed all of it. He said he could end the Sterling Group as a going concern in the time it took to sign a single document. Chase did not argue. He nodded once. In a voice that was steadier than Andre had expected, he said he understood that as well. He said he had not come to negotiate the facts. He had come to ask what Andre was going to do. Andre looked at him for a long moment across the table. He thought about the garden and Brooke's small, hard smile and the laughter that had started, and then stopped. He thought about Chase standing at the podium 6 weeks ago, talking about small thinking and small ambition. He thought about $140 billion and how easy it would be to make this man understand, in the next 30 seconds, exactly what it felt like to stand outside the partitions. Then he thought about Walter Booker and Franklin Crane and the car coming back from Charleston and the man he had been in the kitchen on Alameda Road before any of this had started. He thought about Imani asleep on the couch with the stuffed elephant and about the kind of father he wanted to be standing in front of her at the end of this week. He told Chase he was going to sign the parcels over at the original price they had been valued at 3 years ago, before the market had run on a clean transfer with no conditions and no leverage. He said Sterling Horizon would do the deal because it was a good deal for the city and because the city needed the housing and the jobs the project would produce. He said he wasn't doing it as a favor to Chase. He wasn't doing it for any reason that had anything to do with Chase at all. Then he told Chase that after the transfer closed, Sterling Horizon would not do business with the Sterling Group again while Chase ran it. He did not say it as a threat. He said it the way a man returns something he has been holding for someone else and walks away. Chase did not move for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was thinner than it had been before. He said he understood. He said he would have done worse if their positions had been reversed. He told Andre he was sorry, and he said it the way a man says it, when he does not yet know how much he is sorry for. After Chase left the room, Franklin Crane stayed at the door. He had watched the entire meeting without speaking. He said, in the quiet that followed, that he had not been sure until that moment what kind of man he was working for. He said he was sure now. Andre said nothing in return. He stood by the window for a long time, looking down at the parking deck where the black cars were already beginning to leave. Chase stepped into the hallway and did not stop walking until he reached the elevator. Brooke was standing by the window at the end of the corridor. She had come after all. Chase, walking past her, never looked up. She crossed the hallway when Andre came out of the conference room. She told him she had heard. She did not specify how. She told him she did not understand. She said he could have ended Chase's family, that any other man in this building would have done it without thinking twice, that she would have stood by him through every minute of it. She asked him why he had not. Andre looked at her in the morning light coming through the window. He thought with a kind of distant clarity that he had loved her for almost 10 years, and that it had taken him almost 10 years to see her completely. He told her she had answered her own question. He told her she would have stood by him through it, and that was the difference between the man she thought she had come back to and the man who actually existed. He told her he was not coming back. He said it without anger and without the particular kind of cruelty he had spent the last 73 days choosing not to use. He wished her well, and he meant that too, in the way a man can mean something he no longer has to feel anything about. Then he walked past her down the hall to the elevator. Thomas Beaumont was waiting in the lobby. They walked together to the parking deck. Thomas had decided days earlier what he was going to put in his final report. He had been a lawyer for 31 years, and he had learned somewhere in the middle of his career that the way a man behaves when he thinks no one is watching is the same as the way he behaves when he knows someone is. Andre Booker had behaved the same on day one as he was behaving now. The report had been written before the meeting. Thomas had only needed to confirm it. At the car, he told Andre the 90 days were not yet up, but the inheritance was secure. He told him the foundations were already aware the assets would not be passing to them. He told him the rest of the clock was in his judgment, a formality. He shook Andre's hand. He left. That evening in his hotel suite, Andre read the letter from his uncle one final time. He did not know whether Walter Booker would have considered the day a success or a failure. He thought eventually that Walter had not asked the question that way. The question had only ever been whether the man reading the letter was still the man who could read it. The next morning, Andre left the hotel and drove east across the city to Alameda Road. The sign outside Booker's had been touched up. Patty had hired a kid to repaint it on her own initiative. The booths were still vinyl. The smell inside the walls was the same. He took off the suit jacket and hung it on a hook by the back door. He tied on an apron. He started the brisket. Imani was on the back booth with a science worksheet, looked up at him over her pencil and said, with the absolute certainty of an 8-year-old, "I knew you'd be back today." He kissed the top of her head and went to check the temperature on the smoker. Patty watched him for a long moment from the front counter, then went back to wiping down the espresso machine without saying anything. Patty had grown the staff by 2 while he was away. A line cook from a closed restaurant downtown, and a busser she had vouched for personally. The books, she told him, were the cleanest they had ever been. She never asked where he had gone. He never told her. Some of it she had figured out from the news. The rest of it, she did not need to know. Sterling Horizon Group signed over the parcels at the price Andre had named, and the East Side development moved forward. The story moved slowly through the financial press over the summer. The inheritance, the 90-day condition, the parcels signed over at 3-year-old prices, the way Chase Sterling had walked out of the conference room without saying anything to anybody for the rest of the day. A long piece in the Wall Street Journal ran in August. Andre declined to be interviewed. He read the piece once and put it in a drawer. Chase stepped down as principal of the Sterling Group 6 months later, and the company was restructured under new leadership. Brooke Hollister closed Hollister Properties the following spring and moved to Charleston. She gave no interviews. The clip from the engagement party was eventually taken down. Andre continued to run Sterling Horizon Group from the glass tower in Manhattan when he was needed, and from a small office above Booker's when he was not. He flew commercial. He kept the same 2 suits, although he eventually let his sister talk him into a 3rd one in Navy that actually fit. He installed Franklin Crane as chief executive and pushed most of the day-to-day decisions down into the divisions the way Walter Booker had done in his last years. The senior officers who had laughed at him in his first board meeting were given a choice when their contracts came up for renewal. Stay and report to Franklin, or leave with full severance. 3 stayed. 9 left. Brad Henley was not among the 3. What Andre did with the rest of the money was the part that eventually made the news again in a different way. He established 2 funds out of Sterling Horizon's foundation arm. The first was a low-interest loan program for small restaurants in cities where rent was running ahead of revenue. It made loans without collateral on the strength of 3 years of tax returns and a conversation with the owner. The second was a hardship fund for service workers and small business owners trying to keep their lives together after the loss of a spouse. It paid out quietly and did not publish names. A third, smaller fund was added the following year. It paid the tuition of children whose parents worked in the restaurant industry. He never told Imani that one was her idea, though it had been on a Sunday drive back from the farm. When she had asked him why the kids of the cooks at the fancy places never went to the same schools as the kids of the people who ate there, he did not put his name on the funds. He did not put Walter Booker's name on them either. He gave them the name of the street where he had opened his first restaurant. The Almeida Foundation made its first round of grants the following winter. By the end of the year, it had touched the lives of 1,900 people in 11 cities, and almost none of them knew who had signed the check. On Saturday nights when he was in town, Andre still worked the grill at Booker's. He wore the same smoke-stained apron. He pulled the brisket from the steel barrel at the same time he always had. The line at the door on most Saturdays stretched halfway down the block. He took no reservations. He served everyone in the order they arrived. Imani, 10 years old now, took drink orders on busy nights and got paid in tips she put in a jar labeled college in her own handwriting, with a small drawing of a graduation cap that her father had not corrected, even though the tassel was on the wrong side. A reporter from the New York Financial Press came down once in the second year. and asked him off the record whether he ever thought about Brooke Hollister. Andre said no. He told the reporter the man she had spoken to in the garden that night had not been him, and the man she had come to see in Manhattan on the 73rd day had not been him either. He was not angry about it anymore. He was only sorry sometimes for both of them. The journalists who came to write about him in the years after the story broke mostly wrote the same thing, that the richest man in Houston was the one nobody recognized in his own kitchen, that he was raising a daughter who did her homework in a back booth and called every employee in the building by their first name, that he had walked through 90 days holding a kind of power most men never touch, and had come out the other side with the same shoes he walked in with. A man is not measured by what he can take from the people who took from him. He is measured by what he refuses to take when he finally has the power to take everything. The man who walks out of the kitchen the same as he walked in is the only kind of rich man worth becoming. And maybe the quieter truth, the one Andre never said out loud, but lived every day in front of his daughter, is this: the work of staying yourself is harder than the work of becoming someone new. But it is the only work that pays you back every morning of your life in a currency that nobody can ever take from you.